As a small business owner, have you ever felt overwhelmed by the pressure of choosing the right hire or leading a team? Or have you ever found yourself tolerating a bad hire because you fear trying and failing again as you repeat the hiring process? If so, you're not alone, and you are in the right place. Welcome to the Growing Your Team podcast. The Growing Your Team podcast teaches business owners like you to expand your unique business by teaching you to master the hiring and team management process. Hiring and managing a team does not have to be a challenge. You just have to learn to do it right. And the Growing Your Team podcast teaches you how to become a confident leader who hires right every single time. Now, let's jump into the show where each episode you will learn tips on how to identify what type of help you need on your team, how to source amazing candidates, how to conduct interviews that lead you to your ideal team member, how to onboard successfully, and how to lead every person in your business so you have a team of rock stars who you are happy to pay every single paycheck. So let's jump in and teach you how to hire like a pro. Hello, Jamie Van Kuyk here, and welcome back to the Growing Your Team podcast. Have you ever met someone, learned about their business, and go, oh my gosh, that is so needed. Why aren't more people helping people in this area? That's exactly how I felt when I met this week's guest, Mary Beth Simón. Mary Beth guides business owners to create contingency plans that prepare them and their teams for the unexpected or an extended vacation. She is the CEO of Niche Partnership Consulting and a national conference speaker. She believes continuous learning is the fountain of youth and became a certified Les Mis body balance instructor after retiring from 30 plus years at Vanguard. She's a rescue dog mom, and in her free time, she's active in her local business community. Mary Beth is on a mission to show you how to keep money flowing into your business while you're away. When you hear Mary Beth's story, you'll learn how she got into doing this business after 30 plus years of working in corporate. Contingency planning is something that I think we put off for one day. And the problem is, if we don't plan for it today in our professional lives, our business, and in our personal lives, we could end up in a place where something happens and nobody knows what to do. The planner in me loves that Mary Beth is helping people plan, but this is something that you should be doing even if you're not a planner. So we're going to talk about how contingency planning is important for your business and how it can help you not only for when those things happen that you'd like to avoid, but also how this can help you take a vacation. And I don't mean take a vacation where you have your laptop or phone with you, but a vacation that is a true vacation where you leave everything business-wise at home and your business still runs and makes business without your input on those days that you're gone. Doesn't that sound amazing? Well, let's jump into this conversation so you can learn how to best plan for taking a vacation and then preparing for the unexpected within your business. Hi, Mary Beth. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team podcast.
I'm so excited to be here, Jamie. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, you're so welcome. All right, before we jump into the amazing topic that we have to discuss today, tell everybody about you and your business.
Yeah, so I worked in corporate finance for over 30 years at two different companies, but one company I was there the longest. And I knew that I wanted to retire early and start my own business, but I wasn't exactly sure what I would do. So I had been a project and program manager in corporate, and I was trying to figure it out. I set my retirement date, and then one of my closest friends was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she asked me if she didn't survive, would I be willing to help her husband navigate the finances in her absence? And of course, I said yes. I wasn't really sure what I was agreeing to. I hoped it would never happen. And she did pass away. And then I was working full time, and I spent 3 months working with her husband about 6 hours a week to try and figure out what was going on in their finances. He didn't use a computer or a cell phone. And so I had a lot to figure out there and put a plan in place to help him navigate how to use her retiree benefits and all of that kind of thing. And that was when I realized that we all could do a better job at preparing for the unexpected and creating contingency plans. And that's when I decided to do that as my post-retiree career.
Yeah. So now you're helping a lot of business owners and everything really prepare. And, that unexpected, you don't always want it to happen, but it's good to be prepared.
Yeah. And so the most interesting thing was I started this business in May of 2019. And then guess what happened? Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
global pandemic. And then, so then, everybody became very aware of the need to prepare for the unexpected. And then what happened after that is, like, during the pandemic, business owners became so entrenched in their business and pivoting their business that they ended up taking on even more responsibilities. And by the time we started to come out of the pandemic, we started to see really high numbers of business owner burnout, business owners who were desperately in need of a vacation, and they had kind of lost their mojo in terms of being able to extricate themselves from the business and, hand over the reins to the people who they trust in the business so that they could get some R&R.
Yes, yes. And that is super important. One of the things I shared with you right before we started recording was when I first started, growing your team, I was helping with some of the management side of things as well. And one of my very first clients, his reason for hiring me was really kind of to create that plan so he could learn to trust his team members and delegate properly to his team members so he could take a vacation, a true vacation, and not a working vacation, a true vacation. And he had a physical business, and he was like, being able to trust someone to unlock the doors and lock up at the end of the day and do the things that he normally does throughout the day that is needed so they can serve customers there. And he didn't have that in place yet. And it was like, how can he learn to start trusting his team members? In that case, not necessarily giving them access to everything like he was going to be gone forever, but just so he could take a vacation. And we were able to work through that and help him get to the point where he could take that vacation and feel satisfied on that vacation, knowing things were going to be taken care of without him physically being there.
Yeah, and it is a process, right? And it's something that we should, as business owners, go into intentionally. Unfortunately, what often happens is that it's like a last minute thought, and let me just train you the week before I leave. And then things kind of, may not go quite as we would want it to go, but it's because we didn't really invest in the process.
Yes. Yeah. It's one of those things, investing in the process. You got to do it, even if it doesn't seem like a fun thing to do. Or it's one of those things like any insurance plan that you take out, you invest in insurance, hoping that you never have to really use it. Because having to use your insurance plan means something happens. And it's kind of the same with some of the contingency planning. Something happens to make you have to use it, but it's better to invest in having those contingency plans than getting stuck and not being able to have your business function without you.
Right. And creating contingency plans so that somebody can step in while you're on vacation seems like a very positive approach. And it is a way to get a business owner to just dip their toe into the process of starting to create maybe a broader plan.
Yeah. So what are some of the first things people need to think about when they are going to go create those contingency plans?
Yeah. So from the overall contingency planning process, some things that you want to keep in mind are, do you have a password management system? I have seen business owners with all kinds of ways of managing their passwords, and often it's not a system. So it needs to be something where whoever that key person in your business will be able to follow the process or have access to your passwords. So super, super important. The next thing is, identifying who is that person who you trust completely to be your second in command, whether it is for your personal life or for your business. And this is someone who you would trust, with very sensitive information about your finances, your passwords. I always encourage people to think of this would be a person who you would give power of attorney to. You trust them that much. So that's important to identify. And you might have to make a list, and it might be a couple of people. Sometimes, depending on the business, it might be a board of directors type approach where you have a team of people who are your second in command, and there's one key decision maker. And then the third part is to have your legal documents in order. So that I encourage people to start, with their personal legal documents. What do you need as a human being? And then ensure that you have the legal documents on for your business, created on top of your existing estate plan to make sure that somebody is authorized to run your business. If you are unavailable, if you are overseas for some reason, whatever the case may be.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to touch on a few things that you said there. First off, you talk about this password management system. And I know one of the issues that sometimes comes up is even if someone has your password, a lot of sites now require two-factor identification, which is then typically going to your phone or your email as the business owner. And this is one of the things that we talked about on episode 141 with Nate Ginter is what do you do in these situations when multiple people need access to that code? It's not always you that's requesting that code. And one of the things that he suggests is sometimes just having an email address that's specifically for getting those codes, or even using a Google number that you could have go on multiple cell phones that are getting that text message of here's your code to go log in. So in doing things like that, so kind of preparing so people don't have to depend on you when you're not capable of looking at your phone to give them the code so they can get on there. So that's one thing that I think also helps with that password management system. Seeing you want to use two-factor identification a lot of times to protect your data.
Yeah. And so that is more and more, highly recommended as we get into more cyber crimes. We have two-factor authentication on almost everything these days. So access to your phone or having a system in place like what you just recommended is brilliant. So that's something that's it's essential for accessing the accounts.
Yes, definitely. And then the other thing I want to talk about is, like you mentioned, having this person that you could really trust. And I feel like that's where a lot of people then are getting hung up because they're like, ooh, I don't know if I trust those people yet. And I think that ties to a lot of that fear of delegation that we have as business owners. And sometimes even when we have teams and you're like, well, I'm delegating stuff, like I'm good at delegating that. We're good if you look at the hierarchy of tasks in our business, we can be good at delegating the $10 tasks, maybe good at delegating, the $100 tasks. But when it comes to those like $1,000 tasks, if you're look at hierarchy that way, you're like, ooh, I don't know yet. And and that's a natural thing to happen in business. Like, we trust in increments. We can't, no, most of the time we don't trust hiring that C-level person right away, because we need to build our ability to delegate, to be able to trust at that level. So I feel like it's very common for businesses to have teams where they're all focusing on sometimes those lower level tasks, and you don't have that person yet that you trust at that level to give them that access, to give them that authority. That's one area where I think we need to challenge ourselves is, if you don't have that person in your business, you need to create that person in your business, either by bringing on someone new who you're bringing them on to possibly give them that authority, or creating it in your business by creating the relationship and the delegation authority and the responsibility with a current team member so that you can trust them on that level if a situation does occur.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I look at it like building a muscle. You have to exercise it and on a regular basis in order to build that confidence. And so that's why it's a great idea to use this process for going on vacation, because you start training somebody while you're there, and then maybe while you take a long weekend, and then you're gone for a week, and then maybe you go overseas or something like that. If you set a goal for possibly a big vacation next year, this year is your time to start building that muscle so that you have everything in place when you leave.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I love that. And that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, do it little by little. You don't have to say, all right, we're ripping off the Band-Aid and the first vacation I'm going to take where you can't access me, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, and good luck.
Yeah, the truth is I have seen business owners try that, but then they are hyper-focused on what's happening back at the office while they're on vacation. They're looking for text messages, even if they don't reach out, they're like trying to figure out ways to get a pulse on what's happening, and so they're distracted. They're not enjoying their time away.
Right? Exactly. It's interesting. Like this example like just came to my mind when I was back in corporate, and I had recently been promoted to, I think, to a new position, and I had a team member that was coming in, taking over some of the accounts and everything that I had been working on. And we had been training together for a while. And, I was trying to make sure she knew she had all the resources available and where she could go for questions other than me. And I remember telling her, just joking around, I was like, 'cause she was going on a ski vacation, I was like, if you call me, if you text me, I'm throwing my phone off the mountain because I'm not going to deal with it. And it's like just one of those things. It's like, but I was like, I prepared you. You have the resources, and you might still have questions, but there's other places in the organization you can go to get those questions answered. And of course, that was different because it was a large corporate company versus like a small business. But sometimes it's preparing your team members to know that they have the answers and they have the ability to find the answers.
That's a really good point, because it's not just the business owner who has to build that muscle, but it's also the person who is being trained to be the second in command, or to take over those responsibilities. They have to build their confidence and build their muscle too.
Yeah. Yeah, especially because the authority level might be different when you're very different from when you're away than when you are there. They're making decisions and they're doing anything that's not in their normal day-to-day wheelhouse.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I was curious if this is something like you help your clients through with these contingency plans, because recently, this last year, I was helping an estate planning client of mine, and they'll either ask their clients if they have contingency plans for their business, or the topic will come up. So we created this document to just kind of get them started, to make them realize that this is something you really need to do. And we viewed, like, when they were creating their contingency plan, at kind of different levels. Like you're going on vacation, so people need to be able to do things, to all the way to your unexpected death. All of a sudden, you're not there. What happens to your business when you unexpectedly pass away? And different levels in between. Like, you're stranded someplace. I live in Florida, so let's say a hurricane came through and all of a sudden you don't have power, but the rest of your team does. Oh, you're in the hospital. You're going to survive, but you're in the hospital and you're not physically or mentally capable of working at that point in time because maybe you're on different drugs, you're going into surgery or things like that. Like, all these different levels in between. And one of the things that we did was we said in certain cases, it might be very clear of this is what this person has authority over. These are the type of decisions that need to wait until the business owner is available. Do you build things like that into your plans?
Yeah. So the way that I work with clients, I typically encourage them to start with creating their personal contingency plan. So we work together in 30-day increments on each of these three plans. So first, it's their personal contingency plan, everything about their personal life, their personal legal papers, all of their financial information, everything about their real estate, their vehicles, all of that kind of thing, banking. And then the next 30 days, we work together on creating the contingency plan for their business. So very much like the personal, but this is all business focused. All of their business accounts, their IT assets, their subscriptions, memberships, bank accounts, credit cards, all of that. And then the third leg of it is a 30-day effort on the business continuance playbook. And this is where we work together to document the standard operating procedures for the business owner. Because I find that in most businesses, all of the procedures are documented for everyone else's role in the business, except for the business owners.
Yeah,
Because
exactly. Because you know it. Why you don't need to trade anybody else on it, right?
you'll always be there. You know what to do. You know how everything fits together, right? So that's always an interesting exercise. So in that third leg of the journey during the business continuance playbook is when we typically uncover that the business owner is maybe doing some responsibilities that would be better served by someone else on the team. So I interview them on Zoom and document their procedures for them and give them to them for review. And in that process, we identify who is the process owner for it. And if there could be a backup process owner, who would that be? And that's usually somebody who should be considered for training on the procedure and then maybe eventually turning over the role to that person. So the goal is to lighten the responsibilities for the business owner, especially after the pandemic. I just see so many owners who have taken on, all of these roles. Some of them they really love to do, but it doesn't really fit in their CEO role. And that is the time that we talk about, we create a triage document. So the business owner is gone for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And I always say, let's take the perspective that you are unable to speak or unable to use a computer during that time, because people are like, if I'm in the hospital, I'll take calls. I'll, tell them what to do. So I try and say like, a head injury, you're going to recover, but you can't be looking at a screen and, you can't make decisions and that kind of thing. So we map out, exactly what needs to be done. And we go all the way to the person's death. And so with using that type of a process, we map out a pretty good plan of the steps that need to be taken.
Awesome. That's great. And really looking at it that way. And I think as business owners, it's really hard to envision not being available and our business still running. But it can happen. It can happen. Like you don't have to do everything. And if you grow the right team, your business can survive without you.
Yes. And, so many people I work with, I work with a lot of young business owners who are growing a large business. And their goal is if something happens to them, they do want their business to survive. They want their business to be there for their family, for their beneficiaries, or for somebody else in the business who they know would want to take over the business. So having those conversations helps create, better defined plans as to what the next step should be, and helps them to put any legal processes in place that need to support that type of a transition if it ever comes to be.
Yes, yes. I think that's really important. It reminds me of someone that I knew. He had those kind of just conversations about someone taking over their business. And this was in for retirement purposes. And the person seemed all on board. And then they got to the point where they thought they were in the middle of the transition, but had no legal documents in place. And the other person decided, yep, nope, I'm out. I don't really feel like doing this anymore. They're like, wait, this was my retirement like plan. And then it's like going back to the drawing board of like, what do we do from here? So I feel like that part is really important of like, what can you do legally to support those transitions and everything that you're talking about? And to make sure that you're protected. And I feel like one of the things that's super, super important here is most of us aren't running our businesses because we're bored. We're running our businesses because this is what we want to do to earn income. And what happens if your business can't survive without you and all of a sudden that income source goes away, especially if it's a time where you're in the hospital and not capable of working? Or, not only does your business go away, does your insurance go away because maybe your insurance is through a plan that you created for your business. So having your business survive without you isn't just a benefit of keeping that business going. It's a way of you still able to earn income when you're not capable of working because something happens, or
Yeah.
because you're going to simply go on vacation, that you can still earn income during that time.
Right. And, when a business owner is unexpectedly taken out of a business for a period of time, or, I always think about when COVID was starting and we didn't really know anything about it, and all of those people on cruise ships, uh, who were on their dream vacation, and then they had to stay out to sea for an extended period of time, right? It was the
Yeah.
vacation that turned into the unexpected. When business owners are not able to be in their business and the cash flow starts to dry up, it really jeopardizes the business. So it's important that there is a plan in place to keep the money flowing into the business while the owner is away, to ensure that the business is going to stay viable. And, if you have a team, you have to think about the impact on your employees and your contractors if the owner is out of the business and they don't have a sense of stability. They need to look out for themselves, and they
Right.
start to, worry, am I going to continue to get paid? Do I need to look for another job? I saw that happen with a couple businesses during the pandemic when an owner was hospitalized.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Or because we do recruiting here, like I've even talked to candidates before that the reason that they're looking is because sometimes it's the business owners getting close to that retirement and they can just see that they're just not really giving it all there anymore. And are they still going to have a job? Like there's a lot that if someone starts to feel insecure in their position, as much as they value you or love their job, being able to keep that roof over their head and food on the table is more important. Those are their basic needs. And if they feel like it's in jeopardy working for you, they're going to go elsewhere.
Of course. And I would say to that point, a lot of business owners worry about having the conversation with their team about, this contingency plan that they're creating, that it will make the employees nervous. I beg to differ, and I would argue the opposite, that it makes them confident that the employer is thinking about this, that they're putting a plan in place, that they're being transparent about what the plan is, that they're ensuring the team that there is a process that can be followed to make sure that everything keeps running smoothly if I'm not here.
Yes, yes, exactly. All right. So we talked about kind of the plans that kind of how you work with clients and everything, what really they need to be thinking about. Do you have any other kind of advice or words of wisdom for people to really kind of motivate them to go start creating these plans for both their personal life, because you bring them through that as well, and their business?
Yeah, so I would say that one of the most interesting dynamics that I observe with my clients is that after they put these plans in place, they invest in creating their contingency plans. It frees up a level of anxiety that they did not realize that they were dealing with. And the business owners tend to reach new heights in the year following creating the plans. It's a fascinating dynamic. They feel, relieved and free, and they're ready to tackle something brand new because they feel like they have all of this taken care of.
Yes, yes. I feel like that's so important. And I feel like I can see exactly why that happens. Because when you talked about we go through the process and we really outline what that business owner is doing and identify things that shouldn't be on their plate, that I have really identified is really what holds a lot of businesses back, is we're holding on to things that don't belong in the CEO's bucket of tasks. And we're just afraid of letting them go, or sometimes not even realizing that we should be letting them go. Like, this is one of these examples that kind of always surprises people. I remember I was working with a client who it was a 200-person organization, and the CEO was still holding on to the title of HR director and financial director. Like, they were still doing all those things. And yes, they had people that were helping with like the bookkeeping part of finance, and they had people that were helping with some of the day-to-day work in HR. But when it came to that high-level responsibilities as a CEO, they were still holding on to those for a 200-person organization. And when they were able to finally realize that they needed to get that work off their plate, hire for that, they were able to do so much more because they could focus on what they should be focusing on and not all these other things that they needed an actual expert. And even with some of those areas, once they had an expert on, it was like, all right, well, here's some of the strategies and things we should be doing over here that they didn't have the energy or the capacity to really identify because they had everything else on their plate.
So I'm so curious, Jamie, what do you think it was that kept the CEO tied to the HR work and the financial work?
I think it was habit. It was habit. And they were an organization that, even though they were 200 people, it was a lot of that low-level employees, so kind of the hands-on with the product they were producing, the mid-level management, and then they had a few more senior leaderships, but they kind of looked at, for these parts of their organization, they had all the other departments, and these were kind of like smaller departments for their organization. So it was like, well, if I only have one person here, I don't need a leader, high-level executive leader to manage one person. I can do it. I don't like, so they viewed it as departments. And it was just like that habit of doing those tasks and only having one direct report there. And it's like, I can do one direct report in HR. I can do one direct report in finance, and not realizing that, yes, there might only be one direct report. And maybe that team's not going to dramatically grow when you hire that executive, but there's so much that executive should be doing that you're not doing because out of habit. And you're just in the habit of doing the work that you're doing that you don't, and sometimes they don't see it as important to their business as everything else.
That's so interesting. Fascinating. I mean, I also see business owners holding on to the financial roles, like staying tied to weekly payroll. And it's usually because of privacy concerns. They don't want somebody on the team to see all of the details of who gets paid. So I would say that that's an opportunity, right? To get the right person in that role.
Yeah. And I think like that brings up a really good point as well. And not necessarily privacy concerns of like with payroll, having other people to see what everyone's getting paid, but sometimes that like kind of numbers, I feel like those numbers are sometimes hard to delegate because people are seeing, it's like pulling the curtain back and seeing how things really operate. And sometimes as business owners, we feel like, feel like it's hard sometimes to see our own success and what we've grown and what we should be proud of, because a 200-person organization where you're making millions and millions of dollars a year, the business is making millions and millions of dollars, you're still seeing it as maybe, ooh, maybe we barely made a profit this year, or things like that. So there might be things in those numbers that you're not super proud of, but it might be that you're not doing better because you don't have the expertise and time to dedicate to that. So sometimes it's hard to let other people behind that curtain of something that feels so, even in an organization so large, feels so personal because you were leading the ship for so long. And it's like handing over that that data, that important part, and allowing someone else to see how things are really going.
Yeah. That is so true. That is so true.
All right, Mary Beth, well, we have to start wrapping up for today. So tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So the best way is through my website. And I did create a free personal contingency plan download for your audience. And that's available at nichepartnershipconsulting.net/growing. And so that has everything it has like important questions to get people thinking about, what they need in their contingency plan. There is a password book that I create for my clients if you tend towards wanting a paper process for your passwords. So please feel free to download that, and then we'll be connected.
Sounds good. And I just want to put out like kind of one more thing why I think these is focusing on the personal side is so important, even as business owners and everything, is I know someone who was recently going through a divorce, and they had no idea what was going on with their finances. And someone was actually like, how do you have no idea what's going on with your finances? And their significant other had stopped paying some of the bills, like knowing that they were going to leave, and was kind of like pocketing the money and like doing things like maliciously. And someone was like, how did you not know that? And I just remember kind of being like, raising my hand and be like, I pay all the bills and not control, but handle all the finances in my house. That my husband never looks at that. So he would never know, just because that's the way things are handled in our house. And I feel like that's the way things are handled in a lot of households, not just finances. There's a lot of things where it's like one person is in charge of this and another person is in charge of something else, because you can't be in charge of everything. So you divide and conquer. And having those plans at home, it's like, here's what you need to know. Like if I wasn't around, if something happened to me, if I'm not around, here's the bills that actually need to be paid. Like, here's the ones that are on auto pay. Here's what maybe to go and cancel, like, those type of things. So it's super, super important.
That's exactly right. And sometimes people have some shame about that they don't know everything. But it is our natural tendency to divide and conquer. It would be a waste of resources, right, for us to be involved in everything that the other person, our counterpart does. So it's really a way of efficiency. And everybody does it. So there just has to be an opportunity to transfer that knowledge.
Yes, exactly. It just reminds me of recently, we have solar panels on our house, and with a storm that came through a few months ago, one of our panels got broken. And my husband's been dealing with it, but for whatever reason, they have my number on the account, even though we've tried updating it a number of times with my husband's number. And I just remember the last time I was just like, you just have to call him. Like, I'm not dealing with this. And the guy asked something of like, pretty much along the lines of, well, am I not capable? He wasn't those words, but I was just like, it's not that, like, and was like, I just want to make it clear, like, he's in charge of this. Those are questions to ask him. I am not taking the time to deal with this, because I deal with so much other stuff. Like, this is his responsibility. And
Right.
it was just like that funny thing. It was like, yes, I am capable, but I'm choosing not to do it.
That's right. That's right. And so that mentality goes over to our businesses as well, right? We handle things very much the same way in our businesses. And there's no shame about needing to share that knowledge.
Yep. And it's one of those things like delegate. You might be capable of doing it, but it doesn't mean you have to do it. So delegate, find those people, stop holding on to tasks that the CEO should not own based on the size of your organization.
Absolutely. If you can delegate it, you should.
Yes. All right. Well, our last question for today that I love to ask all my guests. We have all had leaders or managers that stood out to us. Think of a leader or manager that has stood out to you and share one thing about them.
I love this question. So the leader who comes to mind is one who she was very down to earth, and she would be very honest with me about the value that I brought to the organization. And, relay conversations that she would have with her direct manager, and what she would say about me and the value that I brought to the team. And so I do think about that often. Interestingly, she would say that if there was an emergency, she would want me by her side. And now I do things that help people prepare for emergencies. But yeah, it's that kind of thing, where it was unsolicited. And she just shared that type of feedback on a regular basis.
Oh, that's awesome. It's so funny to hear you say that, this comment that's attached to your current career that probably at that point in time, you never really thought about it. Obviously, you shared with us, why you started this business, what really led to it. But I feel like that happens a lot to people. It's kind of like that second career or that business you start that's very different than the career you previously had. If you really think about it, there's probably threads where people were telling you that you were good at things and everything, that it's like, oh, now you're actually doing that and you love it and you're thriving at it. And I think that's always great. It shows that you're really doing the best thing that you could be doing to help people right now.
Yeah, I do love that work. And that would probably be my suggestion to anybody who's in that place of not knowing what they want to do next, is to think about those comments that people have made along the way, that, shine a light on what you're really good at.
Yes, exactly. All right, Mary Beth, thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie. It was a pleasure.
Are you ready to hire a new team member for your business and you want to ensure you hire the person who can succeed in the role, make you happy, and positively impact your bottom line? Then let's talk and see how growing your team can help you master the art of hiring. Through bespoke hiring frameworks and comprehensive guidance, you will learn how to attract candidates who have the passion you desire and the skills needed to succeed. At Growing Your Team, women entrepreneurs and leaders work with us to help them expand their unique businesses by teaching them how to hire like a pro. Let's connect and see how we can help you. Send me an email at jamie@growingyourteam.com. That's Jamie, JAMIE @growingyourteam.com, or head on over to growingyourteam.com/jumpstart, with jumpstart being all one word, and let's talk about how you can become a confident leader who hires right every single time.